Hello and welcome to the Winners Never Quit podcast. Start your week the right way with a laugh and a dose of motivation. Listen to the stories of our guests, learn from their experiences and how they have built a winner's mindset. Hosted by myself, Jack Jarvis. And if you could like, follow or subscribe to the podcast, I would really, really appreciate it. Today I'm joined by a fellow world record holder, endurance swimmer, Oly Rush. Oly holds multiple long-distance swimming records, including the fastest time to swim around the Isle of Wight, and in May, after 37 hours swimming 65 miles, he became the first person to swim around Grand Cayman, and he joins me now. Oly, how the devil are you, mate?
Really
You good?
Really good, thanks, mate. It's great.
Mate, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And the first question, we always start the podcast the same way. What defines winning in your life?
Winning for me, I think, is setting yourself something that's challenging, first of all, and then not necessarily accomplishing it, because sometimes the goals can be so high that you don't always hit them. But I think to just go ahead and give it your all, I think to me is winning, and also enjoying the process.
Very vital, mate, because if you don't enjoy the process and maybe the outcome isn't what you want, it's not a wasted journey as such. So, mate, I've spoke about your achievements, about your swimming career, but let's roll it back. How did you get into swimming? Tell me about your sort of childhood and your early swimming memories.
Yeah, so growing up, I was a competitive swimmer. Me and my brother, we would always be up silly early doing training before school. I don't know what you know about sort of competitive swimming, but the training is so intense. You're swimming before your classmates are normally out of bed, to be honest, and then after school swimming as well. So it was full on, but I loved it. We did fairly well. I came third in England, I think was my highlight for breaststroke. Got to an age of about 13, 14, and you start noticing girls and other things take your interest. And I drifted away from it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've gone back into it so much now and with so much passion, is to really, because you shouldn't have regrets in life, but I think one regret I have is giving up swimming when I was younger.
Do you reckon was it on the cards that you could have progressed, maybe, I don't know, Commonwealth, Olympic Games, or did you quit maybe because you were like, I'm not the elite level, even at 13, having that sort of realisation?
It's different. Without sounding big-headed, I was winning the races. So I don't think that was it. I was always up there. I was tall for my age. In my age group, I was fairly fit as well. Training a hell of a lot at that age. But it just got to a point where I just found other interests. And it's one of those things that I do regret. So, yeah, I think I probably could have gone quite far with the competitive swimming. And now it's more of a case of, I know I can't be the quickest anymore, so I'll damn well swim the furthest.
I'll be the longest. No, I like it. An interesting one I want to touch on there, because something I think about, because I do want kids one day. What would your advice be to trying to keep in a child interest? Do you reckon it's because you started so early, like you maybe pushed a little bit too much or maybe not enough? I'm just trying to sort of untangle that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what it was that made me give up. I think it is just your interests do go elsewhere. Your friendship group might be slightly different. My friends were all into different stuff. Yes, obviously I had a lot of friends at swimming, but it is quite a solo sport. So with swimming, I think the answer to keep people involved in swimming is really it's got to be in them. They've got to want to continue deep down. So I think it's difficult, like you said, if you push someone into something, they're probably going to rebel almost and back away. I don't think, yes, my mum, bless her, she probably was quite pushy, but we needed that in order to get out of bed in the mornings and go swimming. I don't really know how to keep people in a hobby like that, but it's important that that's where it grows from. It's repetition of a certain activity is where you get good at it.
Me and my mum talk, and I say sometimes, I wish she'd have pushed me a little bit harder, because she did. We was always outdoors, active, going to after school clubs and that. And she always says, but yeah, ultimately I couldn't force you, and ultimately I didn't want to force you to do something. So it's like it is a fine, I think, balancing act. So you took the sort of hiatus from swimming. What relit your fire to get back into swimming? You stopped at 13, 14, but what made you want to start again?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is because I think I've got that regret still from giving up at an early age. I think that doesn't go away. Whether I kind of deep down realise that was the catalyst, I'm not sure. But it was combining my two passions, and that's and it's only a recent thing, to be honest. I say recent, the last sort of 5 years, I've noticed how we're kind of treating the planet a lot more. I'm a lot more aware about plastic pollution and things like that, because I'm always down on the coast. So it's combining the passion of the environment and swimming, and really putting those two together. And for me to be able to swim, and I'll be honest, it's the one time my mind gets to be quiet and I can relax is when I'm swimming. So it's a pleasure to do it. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it. And I think you do have to be obsessed in a way to excel.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of why I got back to it, because I get a lot back from it as well.
I'm the same. Like, people ask why I did the row and things like that, and I want to push myself harder now. Is because you look back and you can't say you wasted your childhood, because you're being a kid, aren't you? You know what I mean? Like, of course, like chasing after girls, as you say, or boys, whatever. It's part of growing up. But I look back and I think, God, I wasted some time. Like, hours sat in front playing like Xbox. When you could have been out doing something. So no, I get that. So I actually left something out of your intro. You swam the Jurassic Coast. How far was that? And tell us about sort of when that came about. When did that start? Yeah,
so that was really the catalyst, to be honest, for the distance swimming stuff. That was in 2020. So 2019 was a bit of a turning point for me. I was working 6-7 days a week. I was getting home in the evenings, doing my house up, and really not that happy. I guess I was doing what, unfortunately, a lot of us do, which is chasing, material possessions and money for happiness. And it got to a point where I was at near burnout, and I decided I want to take a day off. So I went down to a place called Chapman's Pool, and that's when I noticed all the plastic pollution. I mean, I'm skipping through this a lot here, but that was the reason I wanted to get back into the swimming and use that as a tool to create awareness. So we decided to do it was going to be a 16-kilometre swim along the Jurassic Coast. So we went out and did a training swim with a chap called Roy Beale from Clean Jurassic Coast, he's a very good friend of mine now. And we did the 16-kilometre swim. We did a training swim, and we realised that actually 16 kilometres didn't feel that much of a challenge. It was like, actually, this is just fun. That we should do something longer. We should try and do something massive. So
is he a good swimmer as well?
He's not. He's a kayaker, which is amazing, because he's really good at just being there in a kayak and providing incredible support. So it kind of was like a match made in heaven, to be honest. And we decided to swim the Jurassic Coast. We did it in 10 days. Well, we did it in 9 days. We got round to Studland, Old Harry Rocks at the end there. So Exmouth in South Devon, all the way along to Studland. And it was something like 86 miles. And I thought, another 14, we can call it 100. That sounds a lot better. So we put a little call out on social media and said, look, if we can get the total, because we were fundraising for some plastic and ocean conservation charities, some local ones. If we can get the total up to 10,000, I'll do another 14 or 16 miles, whatever it was.
What were you on at the time?
We were on 86. So yeah, we had to do another 14 miles.
No, sorry, I meant fundraising.
Oh, we were on about 7,000, so we needed another 3,000 to get. And within about 4 hours, it had gone up to 10. And I was like, I was still buzzing. It was a great idea at the time. But that 10th day, because we'd already achieved the challenge, I'd already achieved what I'd set out to do in the first place, which was the Jurassic Coast. That next 14 miles the next day was so difficult. Yeah. And I don't know if you went through, you've done an incredible row, which hopefully I'll be able to ask you a few questions about as well, to be honest. But I went through some dark stages, and that was just, it was one 14-mile swim. But I remember looking up at my kayaker, and I love the guy to bits. He's one of my best mates now. And he was pulling these little faces to try and motivate me. And I remember just thinking, dude, just stop it. It was just because I was so, tense and anxious and just wanted to get it done. So.
Yeah. What made you keep going on that last day? I mean, how did you... Because David Goggins says a brilliant quote, no finish line. He says, never, ever, always be prepared to go again. Yeah. And that was exactly what you hit your finish line, you were done. Yeah. So how did you keep going? I mean, was it... Yeah, how did you keep going?
That was the trouble. I was done as well. Physically, I was tired. It's not something I was, I hadn't really trained that much for a swim, and I was really tired. I was sleeping in my van every night. We were camping along the coast.
So you're not getting that good night's sleep.
So I wasn't getting a good night's sleep.
I can't imagine the food was, or were you was everyone lashing you up from the local
I was
community?
getting looked after.
Yeah.
My parents and my girlfriend and long suffering girlfriend were bringing stuff down every night, so I was well fed.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I don't sleep well at the best times, let alone in the back of a van.
Yeah.
In some dodgy car park. So
after swimming, average about 10 miles a day? Or
yeah, that sort of distance. So that was tough. So that last day was really tough. And going back to what you said, the David Goggins quote. I mean, that guy's incredible. I love watching and listening to some of his podcasts and books and all sorts. But it's really just remembering that for swimming, it's just putting one arm. You can always put one arm in front of the other, and it's whether you're prepared to just keep enduring that for a certain amount of time. I don't think I very nearly reached it on my last swim, but I was always able just to put one arm in front of the other, so I didn't focus too much on the finish line. I just kept swimming until my kayaker said we're there, and just put my head down, tried to switch off. I'm quite lucky I can go into, it's not a state of meditation exactly, but like I said to you earlier, it is the one time where my mind is quiet. When I'm swimming, my head's down, I can't see anything really, and it's just the sensation of water and stuff going past me. I just find it's amazing. So, but obviously I was very tired.
The reason I like endurance swimming, well, I don't like it, I want to get into it. With running, I've done the ultramarathon, you can stop, all right? You know, you can walk. One thing with swimming, I always think, if you stop, right, or something goes wrong, you'll drown and die. Like, that's a thing that, you know, I need to overcome in my head. And not just that, the abrasions on your skin and the salt water. What was your body sort of like after that, though, that first swim? Because you see Ross Edgley, you know, the chafe for the wetsuit and, you know, the salt water just degrading your skin. Does it have a big effect, or did you not really notice it after sort of 10 days?
It does have a massive effect, more so if you're, I think, in the water for a prolonged period of time. I mean, I was swimming, I guess, you know, up to about 4 or 5 hours, I think, on the Jurassic Coast swim. So it wasn't, yes, it's a long time to be in the sea, but you recover then overnight. You know, you're not getting the things like salt tongue. I had a very good fitting wetsuit from the guys at Snug Wetsuits, so cheers to them. But
great plug there, well
nice
done, Ollie.
Plug. Yeah. So I was pretty careful. I had a proper silicone neck thing. I was using all the Vaseline, so I didn't really get any rubs, to be honest, or anything like that. My tongue was okay. The last swim I've just done, which I'm sure we'll talk about, that's a different story. Yeah. I was in the sea for a long time, and it did the
37 hours, mate.
Yeah, that was something else.
You finished the Jurassic Coast swim, and then you wanted to swim around the Isle of Wight. Why did you want to keep going? Obviously, you're very passionate about ocean conservation. Was it just to build the profile? But what made you want to go back in the arena and do another big event?
Yeah, so my motivation very much comes from, it's not about being, yes, there's definitely an ego there. I think everyone has got a bit of an ego. I want to be a good swimmer, but my majority of my passion and drive to be able to do these big swims is because we get so much from the sea and this planet, and it's our home, and we have to protect it better. So I wanted to do something else, something bigger, that hopefully we could raise more money and, you know, build the profile, and hopefully be able to help, you know, more organisations to be able to get involved with cleaning up the ocean. So we finished the Jurassic swim, and I still can't remember to this day who it was. A chap or lady tapped me on the shoulder. This was on day 9 of the Jurassic swim, when we could see the Isle of Wight, and said, "Oh, you'll be swimming around the Isle of Wight next year." And I don't be stupid, I brushed it under the carpet. And then after the slump, if you like, after the Jurassic swim, because I did get a bit of a slump afterwards. I'd achieved that thing that I'd set out for and been training for so hard for so long. Went through a bit of a slump. When I managed to get out of that, it was, you know, where to next, and I wanted to do another big swim.
Yeah.
Got in touch with a chap who'd last swam round it. Just literally dropped him a message.
Sounds very similar to how we met, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the way to do it, nice and casual. Yeah. So I dropped him a message and said, "Hey Scott," a chap called Scott Dawson, I want to swim around the Isle of Wight. Would be great to have a chat. We had a little chat, and within about 10 minutes, he said sort of said to me, "Look, Ollie, I get people like this phone up all the time or get in contact saying they want to swim around the Isle of Wight without really knowing how big of a challenge it is." He said, "But it sounds like you've got a chance, so let's make it happen." So we built a team. And that was that. Then about a year later, we went and did the Isle of Wight swim. So very lucky.
Talk to us about the logistics of these sort of big swims, because it's not just you in the water. The funding, you know, the safety boats. Talk to us. How was that different from the Jurassic to the Round the Isle of Wight swim?
Yeah, so I've always been very lucky with the swim so far that I've not had to worry too much about that side of it. I'm not great at planning and organising these events. How we've pulled them off so far, I'm not really sure, because I am that bad at planning. What I perhaps am quite good at is getting a good team together that are good at it.
Yeah.
And hopefully, my cheeky smile kind of works and we get people involved and they can see I'm crazy enough to take these swims on. So I haven't had to do too much of the planning. But that said, the people that do give up their time, they're not getting a world record. They're not getting the media attention or whatever it is that a lot of people crave. They're just doing it because they believe in it and it's something they want to get involved in, and that's what's special. So I've been super lucky with the amount of people that have got involved with all my swims. Roy Beale, the first one who organised the Jurassic swim. He planned all the tides, planned all the stops, and the amount of planning that goes into these swims, and it's got bigger with each swim. The Isle of Wight swim, I handed over that side of things, the event planning, to Scott Dawson and a chap called Brian Thompson, a really well-renowned sailor. So I haven't had to get too involved in it, but I know it's huge. And the amount of people that you need to make it happen on the actual day as well is massive. And it all needs to be so flexible, because you can't control the weather. So, maybe you're going to go this week, maybe you're going to go that week. So everyone needs to be flexible, and no one's getting paid. So it's a huge thing.
How many people do you have on the team on the day of the race?
Yeah, so it depends on the swim. So the Jurassic swim was me and Roy, and then I would also, count in all the supporters that came each evening to come along, moral support, a hot soup and all that sort of stuff. The Isle of Wight swim, I would imagine there was about 15 of us on the water. So we had a yacht with skipper by Brian or Scott. They kind of switched over. We had a team of kayakers. So a big event. And then the last swim, Grand Cayman, was double that. We had 2 massive catamarans. We had the Coast Guard. It just went to another level. I was very lucky to have someone who's perhaps got a similar mindset. He's got a military background, very good at planning. And he planned most of that swim for me. So, but that side of it is huge, and not something I wanted to get too involved with, to be honest, because I do need to be focused on the swim, and I need to be focused on the training, and I can't spread myself too thin. I've got to stay focused to do these big swims.
Yeah. How long did it take you to train for the Isle of Wight, and what was the training regime like? Yeah,
so it's not something I've got professional advice for. I do tend to just blag it, I won't lie. I just looked at the size of the swim and thought, right, I trained for a swim that was going to be...
Sorry, Matt, how many miles did you do?
It was 61 miles, I think. Yeah. So it's a long way.
Yeah, that's what, 3 times the channel?
Yeah, it's about 3 times the channel. In terms of distance, just under.
So it's no mean feat. So it's swimming to France and then back. And then to France.
That said, anyone listening now who's swum the channel, I probably couldn't swim the channel, and that's because of the temperature. And that's no other reason. I was in a wetsuit when I swam around the Isle of Wight. I think I would struggle to swim the channel. If chuck me in a wetsuit and I had the right conditions, I could swim across the channel. I think at the moment I would have to put on about 2 stone to be able to swim the channel, because I do get cold quite quick. So although it sounds incredible, and it's a massive, massive swim. And you do have to have a lot of organisation. The tides there. There's a massive undertaking when you start trying to plan to swim around the Isle of Wight. And I'd planned to swim for 26 hours. That's what we estimated the swim was going to take me. So I was swimming in my local pool up and down. The lifeguards thought it was absolutely crazy. It was too cold to do the sort of distance stuff that I needed to do in the sea. So I was in a pool full of chlorine, swimming up and down for up to 8 hours at a time. The hair on my arms was coming out because of the chlorine, and it was horrible, to be honest. But I was able to switch off. I would say I was probably swimming about 16 hours a week. So not massive, but I was swimming every day with a big swim at the weekend. So one big swim, so an 8 or a 10 hour. And then I got a few big swims in as well from my old coach from my Ferndown Otter days, a chap called Mark Newman, absolute legend. And we'd go out on his boat around Poole Harbour and do some big swims, so some 8 hours, some 10-hour training swims. So I'd never done anything bigger than 10 hours in going into the Isle of Wight, which was predicted to take 26 hours. So perhaps a little bit naive, but I know I've got this kind of lazy stroke that I can yet to found how long it will keep going for. Yeah. So still pushing.
I would totally, I wouldn't say that's naive at all, mate, because I'd always get asked, yeah, but Jack, how can you replicate 111 days of ocean rowing, because the longest row I probably did was 3 hours, like a marathon. You're never going to replicate 111 days. So there's, it's all about conditioning. And I was really lucky. I had a really great coach, Gus Barton. Shout out, Gus, if you're listening. And he was so scientific. And it obviously worked because a big thing for me was injury prevention.
Yeah.
And I didn't get injured, and I was able to row every day. Never missed a shift due to injury, which was really good. So no, I wouldn't say it's naive at all, mate. I think people, maybe because we listen to Goggins, think you need this, right? I need to run continuously for 9 days to get ready for an ultra. Speaking about your experience in long distance swimming, if anyone's looking to get into long distance swimming, open water swimming, what would be a little bit of advice you would give them?
Yeah, so like we just said then, I mean, distance swimming, long distance swimming, any kind of swim that takes you more than half an hour is a long swim, really. So you've just got to get efficient. If you're running, you don't hold your breath. So I see a lot of people jump in the pool and the sea, and the first thing they're doing is really struggling to breathe. So you need to just be relaxed. As soon as you tense or anything like that, it's going to use so much more energy. So that's really it, just getting efficient at your stroke. And then, get even more efficient and keep doing it. I think overtraining is really, really, really prevalent, and I think it's something I definitely did with my last swim. Because it was such a big swim, I definitely did too much training. I actually injured my shoulder, didn't swim. I didn't get in the sea for 2 weeks before the swim. So yeah, don't overtrain. Join a local club. If you're going to get into open water swimming specifically, then get with a bunch of people for safety reasons as well.
Yeah.
But just enjoy it, and it's an incredible sport to get involved with.
Yeah, that's why I always encourage my mum, because my mum was a good swimmer and she wants to get into open water swimming. So mum, if you're listening, that's your advice.
Get in there.
Mate, how much of a role do the tides play when you're going round the Isle of Wight? And because you did it on Neeps, didn't you?
We went on a spring.
You went on springs, which surprised me because I thought you'd go on Neeps.
Yeah.
What time of the year did you go, and why did you go then?
So we went in August, and the tides play a huge role. At one point, I think I was beating the Olympic 100-meter pace going along a certain stretch. So the tide plays a massive, massive part of any open water swimming, but especially around an island. With the Isle of Wight, unless you're going to sprint the whole way around, you're going to be against the tide at some point. We kind of took a risk. We looked at the pace I could swim at and how long we thought I could sustain that pace for, and it was decided to go on a spring. There's only about the tide that we went on. It was one of the strongest tides of the year, and I think the area is called Bembridge. I could be wrong, but as you come round the back of the island, there's. Sorry,
just visualising the Isle of Wight. Where did you start?
We started at Seaview and went anti-clockwise.
Anti-clockwise, right?
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. I hope I've got that right now. I'm sure I have. And
turns out you started at cows, went clockwise.
Yeah, no idea. I just swam round and got out at the end. The tides are absolutely incredible, especially going through the Needles there. The speed there. I mean, you could almost say it was a little bit dangerous. The boats couldn't come through there. It was super shallow going through the point where we went through. And then again, I'm sure it's called Bembridge, where the tides are meeting and rushing against each other. You get standing waves, and they were huge. Both the kayakers. I just heard this. Roy shouted at me. I don't want to shout now because I've got a microphone next to my face. And both the kayakers split either side to get out of my way in case they came out, and the waves were huge. Even the safety rib had to go quite wide. So there is these dangers. But yeah, when you're planning a swim around the Isle of Wight, definitely the tides are absolutely essential. Yeah, you could be the best swimmer in the world. You're not going to swim against a spring tide.
No, trying to go through the Needles. And like we said before we start recording, a lot of boats come a cropper there. Because you've got that huge mass of water. If anyone's not very good at sort of geography, coming from Bournemouth, say, and going through that narrow channel, I'm not surprised you were going faster than the 100 metres pace, because it's like, people don't understand, mate. It's dicey, really, really dicey. But anyway, you were successful. 15 hours, very well done. Fastest man around the Isle of Wight. But you weren't done there. Tell us about the next adventure.
No, this is
the official world record that is behind us.
We got the official world record. We should probably touch on that. So with the Isle of Wight, I was kind of. I wasn't bothered. It was useful for getting sponsorship. That it was going to be a world record attempt. And I was told by various organisations, I won't name them, there's only two that deal with those, so people can guess who they are. I was told it was going to be a world record if I went round and stuck to the, obviously you can't be touched. There's certain rules you have to stick to. Because I did it, I told them I was doing it in a wetsuit. That was fine. At the end of the day, they said no because you were in a wetsuit. I wasn't going to complain too much. I'm not bitter. I don't sound bitter.
You don't sound bitter,
Good.
mate.
No.
I'm bitter for you. I'm like, bastards.
I found it quite amusing. But yeah, so that we didn't get the official world record for that, which I know I like to correct because you do see if you Google Oly Rush, Isle of Wight swim, and a lot of the articles say, world record. It's not an official world record because I was in a wetsuit. But yes, so from that, where do you go next? But I kind of... And this sounds weird, even when I say it, to be honest, or even when I think it, is I felt a little bit shortchanged doing that swim. I trained for a 26-hour swim, and 15 hours, 9 minutes later, I'd finished it. And I was a bit like, man, I wanted to push myself. I wanted to find, you know this. I can see by the look on your face. Yeah. You want to know where your boundaries are and what you can achieve. We all want to know what we're capable of. So I wanted to do something bigger, and I'd been out to the Cayman Islands before. I knew they had a problem with plastic pollution, which is one of my big passions, getting rid of plastic pollution. So I wanted to go out there. I had a friend out there as well who could sort of organise it. So I dropped her a message and said, I want to come and swim around Cayman. And she was on it straight away. She loved it. We got in touch with a lady called Claire from Plastic Free Cayman, which was an organisation out there doing amazing work, and said, look, Ollie wants to come out, do this swim. He's just finished the Isle of Wight. She was quite sceptical, to be honest. No one swam around the Grand Cayman before. It's a huge challenge. There's normally a reason why someone's not swum around it before. So yeah, that was what we did. We got the plans together. My dad had been out there, so we were very, very lucky to get accommodation sorted. I think if we'd have paid for my accommodation, it would have been 50 grand.
Really?
Yeah, we stayed at a place called Moritz on the East End. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
So we were lucky. We got some sponsors for that. I flew out there, and we basically put a team together. Me and a chap that I'd only met about 2 months previously. A chap called Chance, who's now a great friend of mine. And he came out. It happened that he was, leaving the army at the same time. Wanted to get involved with the project, liked the sound of what I was doing, and wanted to come and help. So he kind of project managed it along with Jen, who was already in Cayman, and we built this team. And we convinced people it was something we were going to do. It was an incredible experience. And even when I first got there was a lot of skepticism. People didn't really believe that this chap.
The locals.
Yeah, locals. People I'd spoken to over here that were marathon swimmers were very skeptical. 15-hour swim in a wetsuit with tide assist for most of the way was although a big swim, not a massive endurance feat because I had the tide with me and I was in a wetsuit. So there was some skepticism. I remember a chap said to me when I was out there, he said, do you really think you can swim around this island? And we were both leaning across this balcony looking out to sea, and I said, let's put it another way, do you think if my life depended on it I could swim around this island? And he was like
that, love that.
Yeah, he said, he kind of like, you could see a look on his face change, and I just said to him, well, there you go. So if my life depends, I said, I think it's more important than that. I think it's more important than that. And he got goosebumps, and he ended up sponsoring us $5,000. And
fair one. And I like that. That's necky, but I like it though, mate. That's a really good sort of way to think about it. Because I said that about the row, mate. I was like, I'd rather die than fail. Yeah. Like I either do it or I'll die. I saw
that on I think I read your post that said that, and it sounds extreme.
It does. And my mum hates it when I say that, but I knew I was going to do it, so it's not that extreme for I can say it. Yeah. So it's interesting you
knew you were going to do it, but at the same time, you're that invested in it that you're prepared to put. You're prepared
everything.
To go. Yeah. And that's what you have to do these groundbreaking things. You have to be prepared to go further than people have gone before.
Yeah. How did that make you feel? Because I'm guessing there was more skepticism about the Grand Cayman swim. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel? Did it, light your fire more to prove people wrong?
Yeah. I know you've corrected me earlier for saying I'm not. I am quite naive. I will take something on whether I am perhaps capable of it or not. But again, I'm stubborn enough to get the job done. It's famous Ross Edgley quote, isn't it? Naive enough to start, stubborn enough to finish. Love it. But it is a little bit like that. So although I knew there was a lot of skepticism, I knew in my heart that I wanted to see how far I could push myself. Deep down, was I sure I could swim around Grand Cayman? Not necessarily, but combining my, I'm a fairly good swimmer with the fact that I do have this almost, this desire to make a change in the world, because it's not a massive thing we need to do. We need to, well, it is massive, but it's something that if we all make small changes, we really can make a big difference. So I've got this massive desire to help that. So I'm just waffling now. We're going to have to cut that.
No, you're not, mate. You're not, mate. No, it's cool. Honestly. Go on, tell me more. Like, so it's good to hear the passion.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people listen to this, and
yeah.
I get the same question, like, why did you want to do that? It's not, you talk about ego, and yeah, that might be part of it, but it's not the whole reason.
No.
You were so passionate about getting rid of plastic pollution, because it is massive.
Yeah.
Every day, maybe not every day, but the majority of days when I was around the Atlantic, mate, I'd see rubbish in the water. And I'd try and get it if I could, but, you can't. And you realise that if I'm out here, and I'm close to the International Space Station than I am to land, and there's still, like, fishing nets, rubber, but not even fishing nets. I remember seeing a propane tank.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that doing in the Atlantic Ocean, mate? So, no, mate, it's good to hear that where that passion comes from, that drive.
It's proper. Yeah, it's a proper passion. It's something that has come from a place of, I was quite disconnected, to be honest, from all of that sort of stuff. Disconnected with the fact that, we are only one of a lot of species on this earth that deserve to be here and enjoy it and live, and it is depressing to see the amount of stuff that washes up. So I have got that real passion to make a difference in that storm. So although it was a huge swim, I think knowing that I could combine that passion and that why, I think if you've got a real strong why, then, you can achieve some crazy things. And I won't say you can achieve anything, because you can't. Some people, there are certain things, there are certain limits. I couldn't swim in the Arctic Circle because I would freeze. So I know my limits, but I'm up for challenging those.
You've seen those nutters that do it in, like, Speedos, nothing else.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you said this swim around Grand Cayman was a hell of a lot harder than around the Isle of Wight. Why, and what was your thought process sort of halfway through, or what was the thought process when you realised, holy shit, this is a bit juicy, this?
Yeah, the whole thing was off the scale. The Isle of Wight, I'm not going to say that was easy, because it wasn't an easy swim. It's a massive swim, but this was on another scale. So going into the swim, I don't know why. I think maybe because I knew I was injured. I'd injured myself about 2 weeks beforehand on a training swim. I did a 10-hour training swim one weekend, and it was amazing. It felt easy. It felt good. I was confident. Everything felt comfortable. No injuries. And then I went out and did another swim, and my shoulder was just shooting pains. I could barely bring my arm above my head. And I phoned up a mate back here in the UK and sort of told him what was happening. He's a GP, he's a swimmer as well, he's swum the channel, he's an incredible chap, really helped me with the whole process. And he said, look, you've got a couple of options. You don't do the swim, or you stay out of the water for 2 weeks, get some therapy on however you can on your shoulder, and then jump in and see how it feels on the day. So that's kind of what I did. Obviously, we couldn't really tell any of the sponsors this.
Ballsy.
Yeah, so I hadn't swum for 2 weeks. So I remember stood on the shore. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, I think it was. And I'm looking out to sea. And I had absolutely no energy whatsoever, no drive. And I just thought, this is bad. Like, any other day, I'm normally the buzziest person you can imagine. I just felt flat on the day. And we set off, and I kind of got into a rhythm, but didn't really feel relaxed very early on. I was on medication for my shoulder, really strong anti-inflammatories, that had some side effects that I wasn't aware of. And I had one before I set off, and they're meant to be 12-hour intervals. I was given another one of those at 4 hours in, and it just, everything was going straight through me at 4 hours in. So then you're losing any fluids, any food. I remember saying to this lovely lady who was kayaking next to me that I'd only met once or twice, I said, I'm ever so sorry, but my stomach's not feeling too good. And it wasn't, sorry for everyone listening. But yeah, so very early on.
Please tell me you've been in that wetsuit when you finished.
Luckily I wasn't in a wetsuit.
Oh, you weren't in a wetsuit?
No. So moving on. So it went wrong fairly quickly. I felt flat. I felt drained. You know how if you've, I don't know, if you haven't eaten for a while, you've been training and you just feel flat and your sugars, I just didn't feel good. So quite early on, it was quite sure that it was going wrong. I've said that a few times now. And it just was a case of, I'm not going to get another shot at this. I'm not going to have another chance to swim around this island. And to have talked to the schools that I had done, I went and did some school visits beforehand, and I kept pulling back those memories of the school kids and the looks on their faces when I said to them, I'm Ollie, I'm from the UK, and I'm going to swim around your island because I'm fed up about plastic pollution. And it was pulling those memories up that I think kept me going. So eventually we got past the fact that I was, my stomach wasn't well. I managed to sort that out. And it started getting dark when we got to Moritz. Obviously, night time's come. I've been swimming for about 12 hours at this point. And for some reason, I thought I was going to be a bit scared. I'd not done much training at night, which again was a little bit silly, perhaps. And just the most magnificent sensation, just swimming at night. You can't see anything. Had the boats were far enough away that you couldn't really hear the engines. A couple of kayakers, and there was none of the worry about the sharks that had been mentioned and stuff, especially on the east end of the island. And it just never I'll be honest, I never really got to a point where I thought I was going to stop. There were points when I thought perhaps my body was going to force me to stop. I remember towards the end, about 30 hours in, we mentioned earlier about the things.
Mad. You've been swimming for 30 hours. You've still got 7 to go.
I've skipped a lot of the low points, to be fair, but about 30 hours in, I was really struggling to take on water. We talked about the effects of salt water and swimming for a long time. So my tongue was really swollen at this point. I couldn't talk properly. And any water I was drinking, most of it was just running down the side of my face. And it was the same with food. I was really struggling to swallow. And I said to my kayaker next to me, I said, mate, I'm struggling a little bit. It's difficult to breathe. Not thinking that, of course, he was going to. He got on the radio and said, kayaker one, this is. And next thing, the boat's coming over with the medic support, and she wants to put this oxygen thing on my finger to test my oxygen. And I knew as soon as they touched me that there wasn't going to be a world record attempt. And at this point, I can see the finish. Yes, it's 6 hours away, but I can see the finish. And I was like, you're not putting that on me. And they were, we're going to call the swim off. And it got to that. And I thought, how can I turn this around now so that if I can make them laugh, then they might leave me alone. So I said, with my swollen tongue that I couldn't properly talk out of, I said, my name's Ollie and I hate single-use plastics. And the whole place just erupted. Everyone started laughing and stuff. And they were like, no, he's fine. He's fine. And then it was, from then onwards, it was about, I'm looking at the map now as we're sat here. It's just around the corner there. And it was 6 hours of hallucinations. I'd look up at my kayaker Chance at the time, and he'd be playing the guitar 1 minute. And then I'd look down and I could force them. So I'd imagine that he would next have a big Mexican hat on. I'd look up and he'd have a Mexican hat. And it was real. This guy had a Mexican hat on. Obviously he didn't. So, yeah, crazy what the mind can do. And somehow we managed to get to the end. So
that's another thing I didn't even think about, the sleep depth. You would have had no experience of that. But, I don't know. Had you had any experience of those sort of hallucinations? Because being in the military, been on sort of long exercises through the night. And, I remember this one, we were on Dartmoor, dry brick stone wall, and my old science teacher was stood there in the doorway. And I was like, no, surely not. I looked again, he was still there, and I blinked, rubbed my eyes, like that you see in the films. And he'd gone, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired.
And that's from sleep deprivation.
Yeah. It's like mental. So, but what was they, we've spoken, hallucinations, but what was that sort of last 30 minutes when you can see it? Was it pure euphoria when you made it in, or were you just relief because you'd been through the ringer for the last 36 and a half hours, hadn't you?
I was buzzing, when it started getting closer. Because it's funny, if anyone looks at a map now and sees Grand Cayman, the west end of the island, it's kind of like it's a big bay and a 7-mile beach. Yeah. And from one corner of it to the other corner, you can see the two ends. But to swim it, it's 5-6 hours. So for 5 or 6 hours, I was convinced I was nearly at the end. And I remember saying to myself, well, I'm not going to look up now for another 10 minutes and then it will be closer. And I'd be swimming along. And I think that's got to be 10 minutes. And I'd look at my watch and 30 seconds had passed. It was that bad towards the end. I think the main reason was not because I was necessarily in pain. I think at that point everything was numb. It was just the fact that I wanted to go to sleep. I was so tired and just done with swimming. But and I think this was a really clever, I don't know if it was planned, because it was the end and it was motivation, that's where it was going to be needed. But 2 lads I'd already met and been speaking to and had been encouraging me, and I'd been chatting to them about swimming, jumped in and swam the last, I think probably 10 kilometres with me. So I had these two young lads, and they were quicker than me. I think they were like 12 years old. A chap called Ben and Jake, amazing lads. And at this point, they're swimming quicker than me because I was absolutely shot to the world at this point. But just the fact that they were there smiling, they were busting out little shackers at me under the water, and it was brilliant. And the whole crew were just singing, and yeah, there's some cool videos online. And getting to the end, I didn't think my legs were going to work. I thought I'd stand up and fall straight back over. I stood up, and I remember just thinking, this is cool. My legs still work, and they were still there. And it was, and again, whether that was the adrenaline, there was a mattress, not a mattress, but like a medical bed laid out on the floor that they thought I was going to be collapsed into and pulled into the ambulance. But luckily we didn't need any of that. And I was able to talk to a few people and stuff before getting whisked off to hospital. Yeah, incredible.
How long do you spend in hospital and just that little bit of recovery, that initial recovery? What was that like? Were you in bobbins? Were you in clip? Or were you...
It wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
So I reckon if I'd have got out at 30 hours, I would have gone home, had a nasty sunburn, slept it off, and probably not been too bad. It was those last 6 hours that did me in. Swimming for 6-7 hours without proper hydration just sapped me. And muscles start breaking down, all that sort of stuff. I was super dehydrated. I was pretty bad. They said to start with, they tested me rhabdomyolysis, I think it was called, and they said your markers are quite high in your blood. It looks like your muscles are breaking down a lot more than they should.
They start to release protein into the blood, don't they?
Yeah.
And that can.
So they were a bit worried about the levels. They said we're going to be taking you to intensive care. And then another doctor come in about half an hour later, and then they said, actually your markers aren't that bad. We're going to leave you where you are, get loads of fluid. I think I had 16 bags of fluid. They were intent on putting a catheter in, and because I hadn't been for a wee, I said, dude, get me a pint of water, I'll go for a wee for you.
Yeah.
I had a shower at the hospital, so I was in a bad way, but at the same time I was elated. I think the worst thing, and I'll be honest, it was that painful, it actually made me cry, was my shoulders. I was on morphine, and I remember my right shoulder, the pain was just so intense. I was like, I could kind of deal with it because it was one shoulder, and then for some reason the other shoulder did the same. And no matter what I took, this pain wouldn't go away for about an hour. And I did some funny stretch with my shoulders, it disappeared. So whether it was cramping or something in my shoulders, I don't know, but mainly just dehydrated, 3rd-degree burns, and tired.
Yeah.
And I remember sleeping and just appreciating putting my head on that pillow.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. When I got into America, I was unlucky. Basically, I had to anchor off just off the coast.
Yeah.
Because I got there in the middle of the night. Not for like PRs or editing reasons like that. I'd missed my original inlet. So I had to go into this inlet, and I thought, right, I'll go into this inlet in the daylight rather than at night because I've never seen it before. So I had a full night's sleep, and I got in, and it was a really good moment because then all my family were there at a reasonable hour, 11 in the morning. And one thing that annoyed me, so I was in pretty good, I was a little bit unsteady on the legs. I'd like bump into anything, but people like that, oh, Jack, slow down on the beers and stuff. And I was like, slow down on the beers, slow down on the... I've been at sea for 111 days on my own. I'm like, pass me another Corona and I'll have another, burger and chips, mate. So I'm so happy you got to have that moment rather than straight on the bed and off to the hospital. But it can't have been that bad, mate, because you're planning another challenge. Tell us more.
You have to, don't you?
Yeah.
And I said after that swim, I said, I'm never doing this again. I said to Tess, I said to my mum, I said to everyone else, I said, I'm not putting myself through that again. And not just myself, it is, you
family.
feel bad about everyone else because they do go through it as well. Yes, I'm the one in the water who, my mum didn't, she didn't sleep for probably 2 weeks beforehand, worrying about me, you're going to get eaten by sharks, you're going to get stung by one of those jellyfish that's going to kill you.
How old are you, Ollie, if you don't mind me asking?
Old enough that she probably shouldn't be as worried, but mums will, won't
Mate,
they?
I'm 29 and my mum still worries. Do you know what I mean? It never changes, does it?
I'm 37 and she's still worried.
You don't look a day over 36, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. So it's one of them. I want to do it again now.
Yeah.
I've got to this point where it's funny. I don't know if I want to push myself to that level again, which kind of makes it harder to train for this swim or harder to build the motivation up because I'm not. The next island I want to swim around is slightly smaller.
But do you think part of the reason, because I'm not saying you performed badly, but you weren't in peak, like you said, you're on the start line like that.
Yeah.
I've got no energy. 4 hours in, you got the runs. Do you think the reason you want to go again is because you're like, I could do that again, but better?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had the exact conversation with a mate of mine who I train with pretty much every day, and he said to me, you got round that swim and you were hanging before you even set off. So what can you achieve if you're fit? I'm actually going to train less for this swim, and that's not because it's a smaller swim. It's slightly smaller, but we're talking, a couple of hours. I think I overtrained for the last one. I was training every day. I was never giving myself that chance to recover. But yeah, I've built up this ability to be able to get into that headspace where I can just keep going, and I haven't yet found the end. If it was another kilometre, would I have been? Of course I would. I'd have kept going for another kilometre. So how far can you keep pushing?
I get the feeling you would have gone till you died, mate.
Yeah, that's the worrying thing.
Yeah. Mum, don't listen to that.
Yeah, don't listen to that bit. So yeah, I just want to do it again, and we raised an incredible amount of money on the last swim, and also a hell of a lot of awareness. We actually had meetings with government officials. We went in and had a chat with Premier Wayne Panton, I think his name is, of the governor here, but his name is of the governor of the Cayman Islands, and we actually got the it's not the bill, but we got it talked again about bringing the single-use plastic ban in place over there. So they did agree to ban certain items. That hasn't come in yet, but it's getting those talks. You're never going to get to have those talks with people unless you do something out there.
Yeah.
So if I have to keep doing something out there to make that change happen, I want to get to the end of my little short existence knowing that I've done all I can. Because the thing I get satisfaction out of isn't material possessions. It's not having a flash car. It's moments and those. And I'll be honest, the fleeting moments for me are feeling content, which is when I'm swimming. So if I can keep doing it. So yeah, the next one is beautiful island out in Greece called Ithaca. It's slightly smaller, so I'm estimating somewhere between 24 to 30 hours. So still a huge swim in September, early September, and it is very early stages. I've literally only just been starting chatting to a lady that lives out there, trying to make some connections. The Isle of Wight swim, Grand Cayman, I had connections, and I was able to build a team before I got there. It's a lot harder with this one because I don't know anyone on the island. So
why that island?
Yeah, everyone says why do you want to go and swim around Ithaca? It's a massive swim that's not been done before. There's not many of those left to be. Well, there's loads, but not in beautiful locations. If I can go and swim around an island like that,
the Isle of Man.
Yeah. Well, we did talk about the Isle of Man, but we decided that was going to be 50-hour swim.
Oh, okay.
So maybe a stretch too far at the moment, and that would need to be a wetsuit. So it's funny you say the Isle of Man, maybe one day. But yeah, beautiful island out there, warm seas, and again, somewhere that you can hopefully reach the local, fishing community, get them involved as well, get them aware about the ghost nets and the damage that they cause. And there's some fantastic organisations that work locally there as well that I'd like to support. So yeah, why not? Beautiful island.
What you spoke about there, that bill that's been the single-use plastic ban, but what else is that money that you've helped raise, and what effect has that had, and also not just that, the awareness that you've brought? What have you seen sort of try and change?
So with all the swims, we've managed to raise a decent amount of money, incredible support from the local community. A lot of that will come from Instagram or some of the GoFundMe pages and stuff. So the first few swims, a lot of the money went to an organisation called Go Pladdle, a local organisation. They were able to buy a little engine for their boat, electric outboard to go and clear up plastics. Clean Jurassic Coast, who I supported as well. We bought a little boat, which we go out along the Jurassic Coast cleaning up plastics. So I see where the money goes, and that's what's nice.
That's important, yeah.
And with the Cayman swim, it was £50,000 we raised, which is a massive amount of money, and that's going to go towards really helping Plastic-Free Cayman with what they're doing. They've employed someone, so they're taking on a full-time member of staff. I came back with a small amount of money as well from some of the sponsors, which I've put towards a little workshop in my garage, where I'm now able to repurpose the plastics and make stuff out of it. I've been doing school visits and things as well. So we're actually trying to turn into a charity at the moment, or get charity registration, so we can up the efforts that we're doing. So you get to see firsthand where that money going. But again, it's not just about that. It's about the awareness as well. I get people message me that you wouldn't think in 100 years would say, I've just been on a beach clean, or, I did my, they're proud that they've done their recycling. And for them, it's fantastic to hear that. So it is reaching people that perhaps wouldn't hear about these things otherwise.
Yeah, how big of a problem is it in the UK? Because you always see the pictures, I think, say the reef of, maybe Southeast Asia or Africa. But is it still a massive problem in like the UK? We are an island, and how much of a problem is it for us?
Yeah, so it's a huge problem. I mean, it's global. Even if we didn't see the plastics in the seas, we do. You know, I clear on average between 1 to 3 tons on my own from the Jurassic coastline. If you combine what we're all doing along the Jurassic coast, tons and tons and tons of rubbish is washing up on the shores, and it will travel globally. Anything that goes in the ocean has potential to go anywhere with the currents and stuff. So there is a huge problem here. You know, that the bigger plastics break down into microplastics. So it's in the food chain. It's in human blood. It penetrates the blood-brain barrier. It gets in our brain. It's doing all sorts of things that I don't even think we're aware of, to be honest. But also, you know, it traps innocent animals. So it really is a horrible thing when it gets into the environment. Plastic on its own can be, you know, super, super useful. Almost, I think at the moment you could argue that it's almost essential in hospitals in certain situations. Plastic is, but when it gets to the single-use stuff that we can avoid, then I think it's a no-brainer that we need to get away from that.
Yeah. I was going to say, what's your biggest single-use plastic that you hate?
Yeah, plastic bottles, which is why I'm sat here now with me little...
But I feel bad because my bottle's in the car. Honestly, I've got one.
Oh, good man, good man. But it's just, you know, we can all make these small changes, and it does make a huge difference. It's not about being perfect. We still test, bless her, you know, I don't do the shopping. And if I did, would I, you know, do you have the time? Do we have the money? We all live busy lives, but it's making those alternative choices if we can, which makes a huge difference.
No, I love that as well, because a pushback I hear is, oh, I'm not going to make a difference. And I just think, yeah, but if everyone just made those small changes, like you said, we're not perfect. You can't avoid it all of the time. But if you can make those small changes, it really does make a massive difference.
It does make a massive difference. And I think, you know, at the moment, there's a lot of anxiety about whether it's to do with the environment or, you know, where we look with social media. I think everyone's a lot more aware of the, you know, social pressures and stuff. But with regards to the environmental stuff, it is very easy to go down that. I went down a very kind of dark hole, if I'm honest, when I started doing it. I was down at Chapman's Pool. The stuff was washing in quicker than I could put it up. I've got a bit of the old ADHD, which doesn't help when you're trying to pick up every bit of plastic on the beach.
Well, especially when you're making these fine coasters, mate.
Look at that nice little plug.
Yeah, you're welcome. Available on his Etsy shop.
Legend. Yeah. But it's just you can get overwhelmed by it, and it for me it was really a case of realising that we can only do what we can do. So making those small changes do have a big impact, and it's about inspiring other people. I do a few school visits at the moment, and my little opening line is always the same at the minute. I need to come up with a new one, but it's just saying to them, you know, how many people are in this classroom or in this hall at the minute, and you know, sometimes 300 people, 400 people. And I say, imagine if each and every one of you goes away from here and does something that will better impact the planet. I said, but then imagine you then go on to inspire someone else to make a change. So it's that ripple effect. So it does make a difference, and we've got to be positive, because I ain't rolling over and giving up, that's for sure.
Well, I can tell that from your swims, mate. No, Ollie, mate, I've really enjoyed chatting with you this morning, mate. But I've got one sort of final question, mate. If you could give one piece of advice to a young Oly Rush, what would it be and why?
Oh, I should have thought about this. I think it would probably be, I'd love to have known that material possessions didn't make me happy earlier on. I've wasted a lot of time and money chasing these shiny things that make me happy for 5 minutes, and then you get used to them. So I think that would be the advice, you know. Don't go for those shiny things. Stop being a magpie and just and realise what's important in life.
Mate, I totally agree, and I guarantee when you was on the bare bones in that last 6 hours, you weren't thinking, God, wish I had a BMW waiting for me at the finish line. Were you? Am I right?
Exactly right, mate.
Yeah. Mate, no, thank you for today, mate. Really enjoyed it. Guys, that is the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please could you follow, like, and subscribe, as it really helps grow the podcast. Thank you for listening. You enjoy that, mate?
I did
Thank you,
enjoy
mate.
it.
Really
Cheers,
enjoyed
man.
that, buddy.